6 months had passed since Eli moved into the big house in nowhere. The once silent halls were now filled with laughter, the occasional clatter of a dropped toy, and the gentle murmur of cartoons in the living room. Eli had fully embraced the life with Paul, now his dad, and the bond they shared had grown stronger with every pizza night, school morning, and counseling Friday. One Friday afternoon, as Eli and Dad sat at their usual restaurant, enjoying apple pie and ice cream after Eli's counseling session, the phone rang. It was Sally. "Paul, we have a situation," she said. "There's a 9-year-old boy named Mark who has just been removed from his home. The police report severe abuse, black eyes, bruises, malnutrition, and even signs of cigarette burns. Both parents have been arrested. This is meant to be temporary until relatives can be located, but I think he needs a safe, long-term placement." Paul glanced at Eli, who was nibbling at the crust of his pie. "We have space," Paul said quietly. "We can take him in." Eli's eyes lit up. "Another brother? Awesome. Can we go get him today?" Sally arranged for Paul to meet Mark at the police station, where the boy was waiting. When Paul arrived, Mark was sitting quietly on a bench outside the CPS office, shoulders tense, eyes wary. Eli joined him, immediately crouching down to meet Mark at eye level. "It's okay," Eli whispered. "You're safe now. I'll take care of you. Dad's here. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Mark's eyes flickered between Eli and Paul, uncertainty and relief warring on his face. Paul and Sally spoke inside the office, discussing the boy's history, his medical reports, and next steps. Meanwhile, Eli stayed outside with Mark, offering soft reassurances. The boy finally allowed himself a small, hesitant smile. By the evening, Paul drove the boys home. Pizza was already on the menu, a tradition for New Kid Day. Mark requested Hawaiian with extra pineapple, Eli went for pepperoni, and Paul had a simple cheese slice. Paul prepared cool drinks for all of them while the boys explored the house. Mark had his own bedroom, as did Eli, and the space felt large but safe. That night, Eli and Mark played quietly in their rooms before bedtime, sharing whispered stories. The next day, after school, Paul introduced Mark to chess. "Do you know how to play?" he asked. "I know a little," Mark admitted. "But I'm not very good." "Don't worry," Eli said. "I'll teach you some tricks." After a few games, Mark challenged Paul to a match. Eli leaned over and whispered, "Tell him. You want a whipping, old man." Mark's eyes went wide. "A slap?" he asked nervously. Eli winked. "Just try it." The game lasted 15 minutes. To everyone's surprise, Mark won decisively. Eli laughed. "See? We're the ones who beat him." Weeks later, the court hearing for Mark's parents arrived. The judge, having reviewed the case and testimony, was visibly shocked by the abuse Mark had endured. She listened carefully to Sally's account and the letter from Mark's counselor, and she considered the evidence of the safe, nurturing environment provided by Paul and Eli. However, as this was the parents' first offense, the judge could only imprison them for 3 months. Mark, furious, looked up at the judge. "But what happens to me?" he demanded. "You'll return home after their release," the judge replied. Mark's face fell. He looked toward Paul and Eli in the gallery. "No, they're not my parents. They're bullies. I want to stay with Paul and Eli." The judge's assistant clarified the legal term. "You mean you want to be emancipated?" "Yes, whatever that means," Mark said. "I just want to stay with Paul and Eli." The emancipation paperwork was filed immediately. Mark officially adopted the middle name Eli in honor of his new brother. Paul filed immediately for adoption proceedings to begin in earnest. A couple days later, as Mark was now settling in permanently, another call came from Sally. This time, it was about a boy named David. He was 7 years old, having lost both parents in an accident a year earlier. His uncle had taken him in, but emotional abuse had begun soon after, and the teachers had noted that sometimes he would speak, and sometimes he wouldn't. Often he would only respond with gestures, nods, or shakes of the head. Sally explained that David was withdrawn, difficult to communicate with, and had not spoken in full sentences since his trauma. Paul discussed the situation with Eli and Mark. "He's different," Paul said. "He might be quiet at first, maybe not talk at all, but I think we can help him." Eli immediately piped up. "We can give him a safe space. I'll show him it's okay. I'll take care of him." Mark nodded. "Yeah, we've got his back too." Sally arranged for David to come directly to the Nowhere house, since the usual office was closed. Paul reassured the boys that they would give David time and space, as they had with each other. When David arrived, he was quiet, observing everything with wide, wary eyes. He was placed in his own bedroom. As was tradition, each child had their own assigned room. Eli and Mark watched from the hallway, giving him time to settle. At bedtime, the boys went about their routines, watching cartoons, reading quietly, and tucking themselves in. David, exhausted and tense, finally allowed himself to relax, though he remained silent. The next morning, breakfast proceeded as usual. But then something remarkable happened. David, for the first time in months, began speaking. Simple words at first: yes, no, I can, I don't know, without being asked. Paul was astonished. He contacted the counselor and explained the situation. The counselor suggested a test, asked David if he had a secret word, and if so, to write it down. The next morning, David had indeed written a single word in the notebook. Paul looked at David in awe. "Is this the secret key?" he asked. David nodded his head. Paul uttered the secret key quietly while looking David squarely in the eyes. David's eyes fluttered, his jaw relaxed, and his tense shoulders dropped. "Do you feel better?" Paul asked. "Yes, thank you," David replied. "What do you want for breakfast?" Paul asked. "Bacon and eggs with orange juice," David replied immediately. Paul pulled him into a tight embrace, proud of the progress. Eli and Mark looked confused. "What happened?" Eli asked. "That idiot uncle tried to hypnotize him," Paul said lightly. From that day on, David began to recover. Paul arranged for him to attend the same school as Eli and Mark, and the counselor began sessions to remove other triggers from his trauma. The house felt complete with 3 boys, each healing, each learning to trust again. As evening settled over the nowhere house, the boys were winding down. Cartoons flickered on the living room TV. Homework was being quietly completed at the kitchen table, and the smell of warm cocoa filled the air. It was their usual calm, cozy family routine, the rhythm of the house after a long day. Paul was in the kitchen, checking that everyone had what they needed for the next day, while Eli and Mark occasionally laughed over a joke on the TV. David, still soft-spoken but gradually more confident, was quietly drawing in his notebook, a peaceful smile on his face. The phone rang. Paul glanced at the caller ID and saw Sally's name. "Evening, Sally," Paul said, answering. "Hi, Paul." Sally's voice sounded tense but measured. "I know it's late, but I have a situation. There's a 7-year-old girl who's in a difficult placement right now. She won't listen to her current foster parents, and they're asking if it would be okay to bring her to your house directly." Paul paused, considering. He looked around at the boys, who were absorbed in their activities but listening with curiosity. "A girl?" he asked. "Yes," Sally continued. "She's 7, but she's a challenge, very headstrong, doesn't follow instructions easily. I thought of you immediately, since you still have an open slot and your boys are already doing so well." Paul smiled softly. "Sally, it's okay. We'll take her. She'll be safe here, and we'll do our best to help her adjust. Bring her by whenever it's convenient." "Thank you, Paul," Sally said. "I'll coordinate with the current foster parents and call you with the ETA. I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it." "I am," Paul reassured her. "We're ready." He hung up the phone and took a moment to glance at the boys. "Looks like we might have a new sister joining us soon," he said casually. Eli's eyes lit up. "Another sibling? Awesome. Can't wait to meet her." Mark nodded, a grin spreading across his face. "Yeah, I wonder what kind of mischief we can get into with a sister around." David, still quiet but attentive, simply nodded, his curiosity piqued. Paul shook his head with a small chuckle. "All right, everyone, let's finish winding down. We've got a big day tomorrow, and we'll make her feel welcome when she arrives." And so the evening continued, the quiet laughter, the cartoons, the occasional teasing between brothers, with the sense of anticipation that their family was about to grow once again.